Play, Watch, Listen is a mostly games industry podcast brought to you by game developers. The show is supported by Patreon, who got an extended cut of this episode and also got it several days early. Thank you so much to our Patreon supporters for keeping this very independent, sponsor-free show alive. Enjoy the show. We just hit 30,000 wish lists on Steam today, and we were like, where did this come from? And because we haven't really been doing any marketing recently, and it seemed there was partly that I spoke at length about my biggest design philosophy on stream recently, but a lot of it I think has probably come from people all kind of finishing Silksong around the same time and being like, I would like more of this thing.
What's next?
I've heard this is like this thing. And so we just got we've got a bunch of comments of people being like, when's the game coming out? Please come out soon. And we're like, oh. Not that
That's
soon.
weird. It's really there is a genuine art to tracking where wish lists come from.
This one's odd.
The number of times we'll be on a call and it'll just be there'll have been a bunch of spikes on Nick's game, Amberspire. There'll just be a lump of wish list ads, and it's like, well, what was that? And we'll trace it back, and it'll be like, oh, was it one specific YouTube video?
Yeah.
Or there was this article, but sometimes they are just genuinely mysteries. We don't know where they come from.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably dig into it, but I hadn't done that because
you can go insane doing that.
Yeah, it could happen too often, I suppose. It could. Yeah, we do get.
If anyone wants to really mess with Alana, just make a little reminder on your phone a week from when this episode goes up to wishlist.
Oh no! Don't wishlist the game. No.
Oh, that'll really show her. That'll really. Oh, she'd hate that. That'd be so bad.
It is crazy. Also, having made fun of you for many years for telling people to wishlist your games, how important wishlists are. I get it. They really,
just eyeballs in general.
Publishers really care about those. They're really on you about, and even just people who aren't at publishers but work in maybe indie marketing. The second question they ask is how many wish lists? Always. Yeah. Everyone's really on it. Oh, they need a number, man.
Yeah. I remember the good old days when you went to a marketer and you said, I'd like you to market my game, and they got you wish lists. Those were the days. Now it's simply a case of finding the people who already have wish lists and taking credit for it.
That's a great point.
It's a different business model, and I respect it.
I respect it.
Yeah. It sounds easier. It sounds genuinely much more straightforward as a job.
I feel like it's really hard to market a game these days. I was with some friends the other night, and we were talking about genuinely, if a problem I feel like we are underestimating is the fucking volume of video games that are out. There are just so many, and a lot of them these days are so long that I don't have time to play all the games that I want to play, let alone ones that aren't out yet. I have a backlog that's 10 years long.
And the numbers back you up on that. It is obviously Steam is always increasing.
Yeah.
The two things that I think are interesting on top of that are, one, yes, there's data that supports the theory that an individual is playing fewer games because of exactly what you're saying, all these games as a service, all of these kind of longer games, people are not buying as many games as they used to as individuals.
Yeah.
Or if they are, they're buying them years later in a really deep discount sale, which is absolutely lovely. Please buy Thomas Was Alone whenever you get a chance. But it's not the same as being there in launch week. And then the other thing that I saw the other day that I thought was really interesting is how much they are grouping chronologically now. So you're having, because of things like Steam Next Fest, you're now seeing, even it always was the case that most AAA games came out in winter, but now indie games are just spiking on those Next Fests. And you're seeing that we're all grouping into those areas, which my instinct whenever I see something like that is I'm going to release halfway between those spikes. I'm going to go off on a different direction. But
that's interesting.
It's a weird moment with that. So yeah, it's all very reactive. We'll see where it all goes.
I also, I think with indies, when I'm talking to a friend who's making an indie game, and part of the reason that I even joined the team for Layers Deep is, I'm sure I would have said this before on the show, but I very strongly feel that with an indie, if you can understand what a game is from a single screenshot, that's basically your best bet at marketing. If you can look at just one screenshot and be like, got it, I understand this game, you are going to remember it way, way, way better, and you are more likely to buy it because you don't have to watch or get any more information in order to make the next step to decide if you like that kind of game or not. I think Layers Deep does a really good job of that. It was before I even joined. It was like, I understand what this game is. Got it. Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down. I understand. It's just such effective communication. That means also that like when it comes out, any player who isn't going to market your game is just sharing a screenshot or it's like a YouTube thumbnail. They're like, sweet, I get it. And I think that is for indies the easiest way to market in the world. And
it makes sense. So go on.
I was talking to a friend recently whose game is like, I guess I could talk about it. Maybe I'm not sure. They've announced the game, but I was like, I don't know if you would want me to say this, but it's a real blend of genres in a way that's very, very, very cool. And he was showing me that trailer, which I don't think has come out yet. But I was like, in the trailer, I can see the one genre. I'm not seeing the rest of them because your gameplay like really leans towards one particular thing, which I understand why it looks that way. It's like, for that, I would maybe consider having VO. Like, you're not explaining the things that make this particular thing so cool. And people won't dig deeper. People won't go out of their way to understand unless you fucking tell them what's so cool about this.
It's the oatmeal problem of like every grain of rice, every piece of oatmeal can be different, but if there's too many of them next to each other, it's just oatmeal. And you can kind of, with this, like you can muddy things up if your game is like a multi-genre or like an interesting blend. Weirdly, those are, and this plays into your bigger point, like they're harder to market just generally. Like, don't be too clever is it? I think, have I done my toyetic rant on here? I can't remember. Probably. We've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, I think we're at 176 episodes now.
Jesus Christ.
It's a long time.
In the world of toy manufacture, there's this concept of toyeticism. So something being toyetic. And all toyetic basically means is your 4-year-old brain looks at it and goes, I could bend it there and do that. And it's like, the idea of aesthetically tactile, like that you can see the handle you'd grab, the thing you'd play with. And you see that in toy design, definitely, of like how they design toys and also how they market. So like that's why there's so often with toy packaging, like a big button that's visible and a push me text above it, because you're kind of getting that kid to start playing with it in the store before.
It's like they're engaging with it in their brain prior to actually being able to physically touch it. That's super interesting.
And you can see that aesthetic creeping into, which is the cynical take is that we're all much more childlike than we were 20 years ago as adults, but like you can see toyetic design now kind of creeping into stuff aimed at adults. And you could argue as well that a lot of that is just like good anchor design, good design practice in general.
Yeah.
But in terms of this, it plays into it of like when you see the game, when you see the screenshot, you know, I could play that.
And here's what I understand it, but it's also,
I get what it...
You can add yourself to the picture.
I jump off of there. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's something... When we've done well, it's usually been because we've done a good job of communicating that. And when something's been harder to market, it's been because, we tried to be too clever or aesthetically. I remember...
Which is a shame.
Way back when.
Like it is, I genuinely very much believe if you're an indie that like your number one marketing selling point is if I see a screenshot and I know what the game is, that's it. That is the number one thing I tell indies. It does sadly
but it goes to everything.
That it's like, well, you can't make it that complicated.
Yeah. But it also goes to everything. We had it, so with Volume, for those who don't know, that was a stealth... It was Metal Gear Solid VR Missions, inspired heavily by my love of Metal Gear Solid VR Missions. And we launched that, and that was after, so it was my second kind of indie project after Thomas Was Alone, so I was kind of riding high from that, which meant I had a lot of like good placements. So like I announced it at Gamescom on the PlayStation stage, and I did this and I did that. Like I had this large kind of ability to speak to the audience. And what did I do? I looked to like how Assassin's Creed marketed. So our first trailer was like cinematic, and it had like live action footage of our actor, and it had like it was like cinematically framed shots. It had like 10 seconds of gameplay in it. And then when we launched it, the key art for it was this kind of beautiful, painterly, inky kind of design, which was gorgeous. But you looked at it and you had no fucking idea what the game was. And it was, I remember the rush for like, I think it was about, 2 months in, where we just basically overhauled all of our key art, all of our store assets to do exactly what you're saying, of just put gameplay, just put as much visual gameplay as we can. And then we saw things go better. But it's a mistake that I feel like every generation relearns. Especially in the indie space, because you only have those split seconds to get in front of people.
Yeah, and again, I think your toy etiquette, the idea of allowing allowing players to picture themselves playing the thing immediately, like so they know how they would be engaging with the product that you're selling, is the best way to have them remember the fucking game that you're making. Like it just goes such a long way for the minute that somebody has to ask a question, you're actually in trouble. It's not benefiting you.
That's the Ronald Reagan quote, right? Is if someone's asking a question, you've already lost. It was like a political. I know it's Ronald Reagan, but
I take everything back.
Yeah, no,
I take it all back.
It's a Ronald Reagan quote. We can steal from bad people, Alana. That's
he was pro-immigration. Kind of.
Was he?
Yeah, he has. It's crazy when you listen to it now that he has quotes being like, "Immigrants are what make this country what it is."
From like a capitalist perspective, like
100%.
A bigger workforce, basically. Yeah. The other thing with Toyetic, which is the next layer, which is the thing indies never fucking want to hear, but like several marketing people have said this to me in an exasperated way, is the other aspect of Toyetic, which is important, is when the media property itself, when the movie, the TV show, has already looks like a toy. So it's easy to adapt into a toy. And I think that's where that applies to games is making sure that from the off you're thinking about that marketing. You don't make a game that is hard to market. Like you can start very early on,
which sucks,
having conversations.
Yes. Totally. YouTube's the same.
Me up.
You shouldn't make a YouTube video. Like that's one of the things that I just posted on Patreon yesterday that I love about the Play Watch Listen channel is I don't have to worry about fucking any of it because it's entirely community funded. But like it's useless making a YouTube video if you haven't already thought of a good headline, and I do it every time. I always go, I want to talk about this, and then I think of the headline afterwards.
You've got your headline, your title for the video kind of ahead of time.
I'm saying
I feel like it's going to be very clicky.
I should.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No, I don't do it because I basically just explore a topic I find interesting. Then I'm like, oh fuck, but it's the opposite way to do it. You should know what your headline is before you even start working on the video itself, because otherwise it doesn't mean anything if nobody's going to actually watch it really, like in the grand scheme of things. But it's kind of disheartening, but it certainly is true. There's also like a couple of other things about, like I was going to market Layers Deep in a way that was going to be like, I mention it regularly. Yeah, check it out, link in the description. But it was going to be like much closer to launch that I would start pushing a lot of stuff. But we're in this Discord channel, or server, I suppose, that is specifically a bunch of indies, and then there's another one that's specifically a bunch of Metroidvania indies. And a lot of them have said, nope, market it constantly at all times. There is no spoilers for your game. And that's a weird one for me specifically, to be like, okay, consider the amount of people who will see an indie game is so small that if you are posting something that you consider to be a spoiler now or whatever, they're not going to remember it when it comes out anyway, and 99% of people who play the game won't even see that because the reach of indie marketing is so small. So some of the indies that have been very, very successful, or like have 100,000 wish lists without a publisher from nothing, have been ones that are doing that. They're like, nope, post everything every day all the time, and that feels really weird. Like it's definitely, I don't think any of us are quite used to doing that. It's like it feels wrong. It feels like I should be saving everything. And I haven't unlearned that yet.
It was like, it's how we used to do it, and then we all kind of unlearned it. Like I mean, wish lists have been around a long time, but before wish lists had the impact they now do in terms of both the platforms themselves, but also, as you say, in terms of how like publishers and marketers talk about games. Before that, we did get a lot of pressure on us to shorten campaigns, because if you shorten a campaign, the idea is you can spend more money per day in terms of marketing spend, and you can like condense that and be noisy. That was like for a few good 5 years, 10 years. That was the going understanding of how it worked. And it's weird that like I'm now in a position with the next game where I'm going to do exactly what you're saying. Is once that's at a point where it's shareable, I will immediately just start talking about it all the time, which is how I promoted games like 10, 15 years ago. And that feels really alien, but also does feel kind of old school, which again is this thing of being around long enough that everything loops back and repeats. But like that advice is good. We all need to just be talking all the time.
Yeah, and just sharing what you're working on all the time, because there's a very unique thing also about indie. It couldn't be more different to AAA. Obviously, AAA, you have, especially like working at a place like Santa Monica Studio, there are people who are huge fans of whatever the studio makes. And so like I did get followed by a bunch of those people who still follow me now and who are like wonderful and supportive and like so sweet and like very just like they're fans of the property usually more so than anything.
Yeah.
Indie, and this is really new to me because I didn't really know it was a thing, to the extent that it is, I guess I knew in a smaller scale, is you have people who are sort of fans of your game development. And I would say no small part of that with Layers Deep comes from the fact that it started as a successful Kickstarter. That was also technically before I was involved is when they launched that. And then during that process is when they were like, you want to write on this thing? And I was like, yes, that sounds great. And here we are. But it like is people who are not just interested in playing the game for themselves, but are actually interested in watching you develop it. And I didn't...
Totally.
Like, it's not to say that I wouldn't be interested in seeing how Rockstar is developing GTA 6. I'd fucking love to see that, but I don't know what that looks like. Whereas when it's indie, you can at least communicate it. And it's just a thing I guess I wasn't aware of.
Do you feel uniquely prepared for that as someone who that's arguably, there's been an element of that with everything you've done, like on YouTube, for example. Like, do you feel... I would never besmirch your good name by calling you an influencer unless there was a marketing company watching who we wanted to say you were an influencer in front of. I would never besmirch you, but you are kind of an influencer, right? Like, so are you used to that in a way that means, do you think you're well set up for that just from experience because you have had to kind of be open with an audience about the manner in which you make things and talking to them about this is why I'm making this content, this is what I'm doing? Do you think you're better prepared for that?
I mean, I imagine so, in that I can just I've 10 years of speaking to a large group of people for a long time, but it's different in that it is much more, I guess it was a thing when I was in media too, and I suppose to a lesser extent YouTube. It's like people are the people who are nice on the internet are actively interested in things that I'm working on and are like, what's the next video about, or whatever, you know what I mean? They do that with Play Watch Listen. Like, what is the next episode about? Whatever, that happens.
We don't know. That's the answer.
We have no idea ever. I was editing in front of my mum one of the podcast episodes, and she was like, do you have like a run, like how do you know what you're going to talk about? I'm like, oh, we have no idea. Like ever. And she's like, you don't like come in with anything planned? And I was like, no. And I don't do that for any of my podcasts, and I think the reason that any of them actually work is that it's actually just people who like talking to each other. We don't have to have a plan. You cast well,
I think.
I definitely put a lot of thought into it.
People who like to talk.
Yeah, and who like each other. So it's like I will think about something during the week that I'll be like I have a thing that I wanted to ask you about today that I was like, oh, I'd like to hear Mike's perspective on that. And then I just won't ask you ahead of time. But that's all. It's just, I way prefer it to having a run of show because the conversations are much more organic. And now we're talking about fucking indie.
You concentrate our friendship into lumps of time.
Well, the movie podcast that we're doing is like, we'll text and we'll be like, shut up. We're going to record. Like, don't talk about it yet, which is funny. But we like talking to each other and it works out really well. I think that makes for a good podcast when you're actually interested in what other people have to say. But
that was what I said. Someone came up to me in the pub a week ago, and like was on big fan of Play Watch List and love what you guys do. And my response to him was, "Alana does a lot of work."
I'm really glad to appreciate that. Thank you so much. I had someone on Twitch.
Thank you so much. Alana does all the work. Yeah.
Had someone on Twitch yesterday, and it means so much to me every time I said this to them. Tell me that they got a job in game design because of Play Watch Listen. Like, we've been doing this show for, I think, 5 years now, and there are people who've gotten into game development because of this show. And I'm like, that, I think, is one of the largest compliments of my life.
And I've massively failed then, because that's the opposite of my objective with being here. That's I want to put people off.
You fucked it up. Really cool. That's Great really work. Cool. Yeah, it means a lot. Yeah. But sorry, what I was saying anyway is that Layers Deep is different in that I'm not used to sharing the creative process in real time. So I'm used to sharing an end result, which is like, obviously the creative process of a YouTube video or an article when I was at IGN, or even voice acting stuff I've been doing more and more of, is like, by the time they see it, it's done. You can be like, oh, I'm working on this. But the process of a video game is very different. And so it's just a weird, it's in terms of community management, sure, I'm probably fine with that. But in terms of what to share, it's almost like I have to unlearn the AAA where I'm afraid to say anything at all really ever. And it's like I wrote this, I have this short story. It's, I think, 8 or 9 pages. And I wrote it as, it's our lore doc, basically, where it's just everything that happened from, 1,000 years prior to the start of our game to the start of our game. And I wrote that and I just sent it to the team. And I've, like, some publishers who've asked to see it, I've sent it to them. And I had never intended to publish that. I currently have no intention of ever publishing that, because, like, my ideal in terms of, like, the way we're distributing lore in this game is that if somebody at some point makes a YouTube video that looks vaguely like that document, then we've done a good job. And I don't intend to spell anything out.
It's more interesting if you make them work for it and discover it themselves.
Totally,
right?
Yeah. And it's, I think, releasing it, I don't know. It also, I guess I have it in my head that I'm like, but this is, like, I wrote it so that all the decisions that we make are clear, and why everything is where everything is clear, including the way the world is, and, like, which creatures exist in which spaces. It's like, it's all very specific. And that almost feels like sharing a part of my brain, but maybe that's part of it that we should get over. Like,
well, I think as well, like, I kind of agree with holding that back for the exact reason you said, but I think the big thing that I always have to kind of remind people of, and that comes up a lot in conversation, is your job is so much more interesting than you think it is. Like, and to anyone in game development, like, we are, the number of times, like, where I've kind of publicly posted about something that I consider just the most rudimentary, dull, boring run-of-the-mill job, and that will be the thing that kind of gets talked about. Or there was one volume I posted about, I had a specific solution to, like, a collider issue that I was having in the levels, and that ended up getting picked up by, like, in games websites, because it was just an interesting story about how you solve the problem. What we do is inherently interesting. I mean, I guess this podcast is evidence that you don't have to put much preparation in. Like, our jobs are interesting enough that people do want to kind of hear how these things work. Or for me, like, even with what you're saying there, it's like, yes, you could share that document, but you could also, I'd watch, like, an hour-long video where you described how you think about that. How do you put something like that together? What's your approaches? What's the way you work on that? I would read an article, I'd watch a video, I'd be interested in the thought process. The one that always, it's a cliche at every conference, how quickly it'll get mentioned, but the door article, was it Emily Short wrote? There's an article about a door in a game and how much work a door creates in all the different departments. Stuff like that is so rudimentarily, I don't know. It's very interesting. And it's interesting to an audience. I think we can.
I did share a breakdown of how I got to the point of, because I know that, like, in that I know that uniquely because I wanted to get into game development, because when I was at IGN doing dev interviews, IGN First, they call them, like, we made mini documentaries. I did maybe 5 of them. Was the most interesting part of the job to me. And then I was like, this is really fucking interesting. So I, like, even though I'm now doing it, I know it's interesting.
That's good. You remember that.
I'm totally aware of it being interesting. So I did share on Blue Sky a while ago, just, like, very messily, basically how I wrote I don't know how many words it is. It's like 7,000 words or something to get there, which is basically like a vague map of shit that we already, let me see if I can find it.
I know a bunch of people who are getting back in while you're looking for it. I know a bunch of people who are getting into, like, blogging again. Like, all the old shit we all did is now just becoming very attractive again as a way of spreading word about what you're doing.
Yeah. It's also the internet's fucking dying, so it's actually weirdly blogs are kind of coming back as, like, a staple of, like, well, no one else is contributing to this. This cannot be AI. It doesn't have communication. Like, it's wild. Yeah, I posted it in July, and I finally submitted the giant lore doc that I've been working on to the rest of the team this morning. Started out as 31 scrappy pages in a notebook featuring terrible maps. Yeah, so the maps was actually a really interesting part of it, was that I had to draw maps in order for the story beats to make sense to me. And then
you think about like the geopolitics of
kind
how
of
different peoples interacted, or something?
like where they all were and in what order they were, for me to be able to go, okay, well, this person would be here for this reason. Like, I was talking about this on stream too, but I think at this point, my number one narrative pillar, which is like in partly inspired by the conversation that we had with Tonda, the creator of Blueprints, is logic. So this is not going to be actually feasible, like 100%, but as much as I can, I'm trying to make it so that my pillar for narrative, which like is the one thing that would inform other departments as like a thing that I'm being strict to, is things can only be there if they make sense to be there. So the example that I use, and this is not to say people who aren't doing this are doing anything wrong. There are many reasons not to do this. It's honestly that giving yourself a pillar like this gives you a restriction, which can make a lot of things easier. But the example I'm giving is Silksong has these gauntlet rooms where you walk into a room, the two doors shut, and then you fight basically like every enemy you may have seen in that area, and then the door opens and you leave. We can't have that in Layers Deep because nobody would be closing those doors. Those enemies would not be coming from anywhere to be there to fight you specifically, unless somebody had actually set up like a arena. There would be there's no function that I can logically think of that I don't have to give a player a bunch of text to explain of why, just punched my microphone, sorry, why two doors would shut and a bunch of enemies would fight me and then two doors would open. It can't happen because there's no functional reason for it to be there. Again, not saying that's a negative about Silksong at all. I fully understand why it's there. It does such a good job of teaching you how every single enemy that you interact with in those levels is going to fight you, really, or to give you a skill check before you move on to a boss. Like, there are many great design reasons those are there. It's just a pillar I've given myself of restraint. So the lore doc, a lot of it is really like, here's the stuff you guys already had before I even joined. Here's some of the stuff that I've added. Here is why every single thing is in the exact place that it is, with 1,000 years of context that hopefully nobody reads. So I went on to say, the way that I did it was I basically just started asking myself questions, and then I would answer my own questions. I just kept writing and writing and writing. It's 60 pages of fucking garbage, out of order, because I would like link pages like a choose your own adventure book that, like, if anybody ever read, they'd be like, you've lost your mind, this is insane. Like, it's
this is scrawled on the wall of a serial
It may as well have been, and then I took that and I didn't even really need to reread that, because at that point, I like, once I'd done that work, I knew the answers to everything, and then just transferred it to a short story, because it felt like the easiest way to give people that information, which is like definitely a second part of game dev that I can fucking tell you for sure that especially anyone in AAA knows. Not that I had this experience, to be fair, but I know it's a thing. Nobody reads anything. Like, if you try and give your team something to read and it is large, probably not going to read it. So I tried to keep it short and sent it, and they both liked it. But the purpose of it really was to make sure that they understood the world that we're making and why things are where they are, so that the two other people doing things with the two other departments can make fully informed decisions, and we aren't trying to decide things on the fly, basically. And I think that, like, I did a short story just because it felt like the easiest way to communicate that information that you can always reference back to, rather than doing a Miro board, which can look really complicated or whatever. It was like, let me just make it like a literal fairy tale-esque lore doc and send that over. And it seems to have worked. Definitely a helpful thing to do for all of us, to be like, wait a minute, hang on. Oh, that's right. This is here because of this or whatever, which is, like I said, a thing I'm trying to stick to as a pillar that I'm sure won't succeed 100%, because there'll be some shit that I'll have to be like, we fucking need it for gameplay purposes. I don't know what to fucking tell you. Like, I'm going to have to concede.
I mean, even if you break it, it's focus, isn't it? I can't remember who this was, but I remember watching a talk by a film writer, and him talking about like 3-act structures and 5-act structures, and basically saying it doesn't fucking matter what structure you use. The point is that you just have a system by which you think through your ideas better, and your thing will be better regardless of what shape of rule you put on it.
It's easier to make.
So yeah, even if you break that rule. Say again.
It's easier to make. If you have a structure, it is easier for you to make something. That's all it is. Again, it's like when I'm saying that I'm using this structure, I'm not saying it's better than anyone who doesn't do that in any stretch of the word. There are brilliant games that don't fucking do that at all. Zelda doesn't do that. Like, you don't need to...
I don't sit down and write lore at all, ever. I always write my narrative, and then I write the lore to support the narrative I'm writing. I come at it
by narrative, do you mean you do the outline first?
Yeah, well, yeah, like my character arcs, the story I'm telling in the thing I'm making, and then the lore spills out to justify and support that. And then, of course, what happens is the two start to have a conversation, and you realize, London's happening out there. Apologies, lots of loud.
I forgot you're in London again. We did technically do the story first, but then I backed up to do the outline because, like I said, part of it was there were already. To do the lore. Part of it was there was already environments and characters that were in certain places. And I actually find that puzzle very fun in the indie scale, but can be very complicated in AAA.
I think it
where
works
I had to be like, why are they
because there's less. I think in indie there's more malleability. Like, if you turn around to your team and say, I'm so sorry, this specific level doesn't work with the story we're telling, you would have much more room to change that than if it was a AAA level that already had an art pass and everyone was very invested. I genuinely think doing it that way around, and this is controversial, there's lots of writers who disagree with this, but I genuinely prefer it when you build the game levels and content before you write the story. It's really interesting to me, and Thomas Was Alone... I basically made it basically in chronological order in terms of the levels. And 100 levels. I'd made the first 50 before I wrote and recorded the script. So the first half of Thomas Was Alone is really narratively integrated because, like, Danny's doing voiceover of like, and then he had to jump over that thing, and he jumped over that thing, and then about 50% of the way through the game, I ran out of track. I hadn't built those levels yet. So he was narrating a story, but it wasn't connected to the world as much. Like, there was stuff in there that I managed to like hook up and sort of make work, but it wasn't quite there. And for me, that really is noticeable as like a quality dip in the writing in that game after that halfway mark. Like, because I didn't know the level I was doing. If in Naughty Dog, they fake it.
Do you know what the story you're telling is first? I assume you mean the words writing part.
The words. Yeah, I'll have like an outline. With Thomas Was Alone, I didn't, because with Thomas Was Alone, I made half that game without knowing what the story was. I was just making levels.
Thomas Was Alone is a real like individual person fucking around and being like, something. Like, that's how it started, right?
Later, what I've done like since when I've had teams is an outline, a premise, a kind of a framework of here's the vague story we're telling.
Yeah.
And the big beats, maybe like, so with Tron Callis, for example, like I'd written the story structure. I knew kind of what characters were moving where and what their relationships were and how that all worked. Then we built all the levels and stuff. But in terms of like doing that final writing pass and then taking that to VO, I leave that as late as I can, because I want to be able to have a voiceover character like acknowledge something that happens in the game or something that's part of the world that you're in. You can do it if you've got Naughty Dog money. You can kind of do it in two passes. You do like the initial pass, and then as you're making the game, you kind of you can kind of get the game relatively finished and then bring Nolan North or Troy back in for a couple of days and go get them to record. I think I should climb up that ladder. All of those bits can come later. But when you've only got like one VO session because you're an indie, I try and leave that as late as I can, basically, without becoming unrealistic. Because then you can have them be reactive. And we had like Danny literally was watching. He played Thomas Was Alone for a bit before recording, and then he was watching me play it when he was like doing some of the scenes from it, which meant that the way that voice works with the level is so much better because it's a whole thing at that point.
Yeah.
But it's a tough balancing act. There's lots of logistical reasons that can't be done, but I think there's I can't remember how we got onto that, but I
understand why you would.
I like a framework.
Yeah, I understand why you would do that. It's the thing that horrifies me. Like, I've not done any writing for Layers Deep in terms of everything I'm doing right now is narrative design, which is like structure. Yeah, it's all like I've not written a line of dialogue that's like I actually intend to be used in any way. It's all, who are these characters? What are they doing? What do they want? Like, where are we going and why are we going? And why is this building here in this place or whatever the fuck? I've not done any writing. The part that like horrifies me, especially like knowing friends who've done it, is like often, I think Call of Duty is one that does this. They will hire writers late into the project and then they have to piece a story together based on the gameplay that's
justify
there.
why these 5 moments have to happen. Yeah.
Fucking nightmare.
That's so many. Or they'll have. I won't say what the game was, but I was talking to someone the other day about a big AAA game where literally the last 2 hours of the game just were cut, and they had to complete at a very late stage, and they had to basically restructure all of their ending to
That's brutal.
account for that and fix that. Right at the last minute. But yeah, the whole getting a writer in the last 6 months to fix things in AAA, that sucks, and that's a horrible situation for a lot of writers. I massively benefit from the fact that my games are relatively cheap to make and that I'm in charge of them. So if I want to slam my feet into the ground and say, no, this level's really important.
Yeah.
There's a level in Tron Catalyst, I won't say which one, which was an absolute nightmare to make, and really, realistically does not give much gameplay to the player, but it was so important to me narratively that moment was in the game that we spent way too much time on it and money on it just getting that done. And there is, I've definitely said this before on the show, there is a correlation between where in the company the most senior writer is and how much you can get away with that stuff.
Yeah.
That is very much, that's why Naughty Dog pull that off, is because there's writers in positions of power.
SMS is the same, is that it's a writing first studio, in no small part because that's like one of the things that Corey is extremely interested in. Like, that's just how it works. Though he hilariously says that he hires writers so that he doesn't have to do any of the writing. And he's like, and here's my story, write it, which I love. But yeah, I can't even imagine having to join a project that's already like gameplay built. I guess I would maybe find the challenge fun, but in a lot of ways I think I would find that frustrating. Whereas Layers Deep, because it technically started from the perspective of an artist, Josh is an artist, he's an animator, that's what he's been doing professionally.
Which means he's doing storytelling from the get-go anyway. When
100%.
he's thinking about his art, he's already pulling towards consistency.
Yeah, and he'll like
design
draw a
patterns.
character that has so much personality that actually makes it very easy for me to figure out who that character is. Like,
You're kind with the grain of the wood at that point, right?
Yes, like there's a character that it's like this little fox that's got like a little I think it originally had like a little harmonica, and it's in like early, like before I joined, and I was like, I got to figure out who that fox is and what that fox is doing and why. And I think I may have taken the harmonica off the fox, and he was like, can I give somebody else the harmonica? I was like, 100%. Not that fox.
You had to literally work out what the fox says. That's what
I did. I had to figure out what does the fox say, and I'm very happy with what the fox says. But it was like a really fun thing where I'm like, what can all of these little pieces you've already got do to serve the world that we have? And they had already, Josh specifically, but I guess both Josh and Eric had already figured out what a lot of the world like was going to look like and the way it was structured. I basically, narratively, in terms of like level, was just like, I need the final level to be this. Specifically this, has to look this way, has to function this way. That is the only one that I really need to be a specific way to like work the story into this. And they're like, great, let's do that. Cool. But then otherwise it was almost easier for me to, like we were saying earlier, like have some restrictions to play around in, where it was like, okay, well, this looks like this. How can I extrapolate? That's, I think, I was talking to a friend who worked on, I may have said this before on the show too, it's we're 176 episodes, fuck off, sometimes we repeat ourselves.
Stop apologizing.
Okay?
Yeah.
Troy's still on the train, whatever. But he worked on Star Wars, and he worked after that, he immediately worked on a brand new IP, and he was like, Star Wars was like excruciating and very difficult for many reasons, and very restrictive for very many reasons, but it was like I had the toys and I just had to figure out which box I could put them in. And he was like, working on a new IP from nothing is like, I have a giant sandbox with a million grains of sand, and I have no idea where any of them are going to fit anywhere. And I was like, yeah, that is harder in many ways to be like, and here's
I can relate.
game.
That's where I live right now. Like I've gone from like
I guess that's where you've mostly
John Wick,
lived.
yeah, High Table.
Yeah,
Well, no,
John Wick
I'm now in that place. Like I was doing licensed stuff for
Oh, that's right. You started doing licensed stuff, didn't you?
7 years.
Yeah.
No, well, I started years and years ago, but like for the last 6 or 7 years, I've just been doing basically John Wick and Tron with a couple of smaller games like in the gaps. And
You've been working on those two
being
together.
in a position now.
That's crazy. Wow. It's a long time.
So I'm back to the kind of okay, first principles. There's this dude, and he has to go on a journey. Fuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if there's nobody else to like make that smaller for you, it's like I'll just do everything then, I guess. All right, shit.
So yeah, I guess it's everything.
Yeah.
My rule is always just try and make something that would entertain me when I was 14, and that's what I'm doing right now. We'll see.
I think it's the only way to achieve it is you can't make a video game that you want everybody to like. It's just not. You can't make any art that is for everybody. It's just not possible. That's not a hot take. It's not a unique take. You can't.
I do think you make a game with an audience in mind, for sure. I think the biggest thing you can do is you can use an audience to validate or check in on whether you're achieving your goal. I think the second you're being led by the audience or by kind of an expectation of what the world at large wants, you're in trouble. But I think if you can work out how to do what you want to do and then just check in on whether you're being successful in achieving that, that's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Which I sometimes succeed at, sometimes fail. I'm a big fan of like playtesting and stuff for that reason. Like I use a lot of official and unofficial playtesting just to kind of validate everything, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you make something that you're making because you enjoy making it, or that you think that you would like playing it, I think is huge.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you need to be like, is this shit though? No? Okay, great. It's not about making everyone like it. It's just about making sure it's not garbage. Because sometimes you don't know.
You need to get like 5 to 10 friends who will tell you when something you love is shit, and then lean on them heavily in moments of questioning. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's that's the real. It's made by one guy and 9 or 10 of his closest friends. Video games in 2025.
Totally.
100%. So weird.
Oh, yeah.
What a time.
My little boutique studio of 50 people that, they're all buddies though. I mean, I pay them obviously just to be nice, but it's
just me and a couple of people I know.
Just me and my buds.
Like, I don't remember when I last ranted about this, but someone was talking about Stardew Valley. This might have again even been like 2 weeks ago here. It was like oh well, if he can just make one game by himself, then why can't everybody else no, his wife published that game. Or girlfriend, I'm not sure. But
I mean, he'll also a publisher published that game
also
as well.
True. Yes. But before then,
like
he totally had help. Still cool though, obviously. It's a very fucking impressive thing that he made. I'm not gonna take that away from him.
I think in fairness, I think most of the time the individuals know better than to pretend that they do things on their own. It's always a narrative.
Oh yeah, no, I can't imagine that he would be doing it. That's how we know that he had help. Yeah, totally. Have you I don't even know how this relates. Have you seen Undertale?
Mm-hmm.
Extremely popular.
Familiar.
Made by Toby Fox. Do you know the thing about that game notoriously having terrible code?
I don't, but that makes sense.
It's really interesting. So apparently, like, if you the people I don't know found the code for Undertale, and it's just atrocious. Because I guess Toby Fox, from his background, I mean he started using programs like MS Paint and Game Maker, and the soundtrack was composed on piano. He worked on
piano,
RPG Maker.
You say it's a good software piano. Piano is very cool. I didn't like version 7, but I think they really fixed it.
Shut up. That's what it said. You know what it means.
Yeah, I do know what it means. I don't know why I'm being a dick.
So he did. He then composed a bunch of stuff for Homestuck, etc. But it's a thing that I only came across recently because I've been trying to do more stuff in Godot, and so I've just learned slightly more about coding recently, and it's really funny. There are a lot of videos that are man, this is terrible code. Like he just like didn't really know.
Presumably those videos though were made by people who didn't make Undertale. Though,
that's
right?
a great point. It's like
Like,
and I think that's
that's the-
inspiring though. Like
Yeah.
that, like if the idea is this, I don't know what this means. You might know what this means. Apparently, Undertale has a 1,000 plus long case switch statement. I don't know what that means though.
It's a statement that says, hey, check if you should be in group 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If you're in group 1, do this. If you're in group 2, do this. If you're group 3, etc. So it's doing
Wait, is
that
it saying he has 1,000?
Yeah, so the reason you do a state machines or state checks are like they're a better solution than if statements, which are like the famously very beginner level way of coding, but you're not meant to make very, very large ones. That is funny. But to be fair, you know, my code's full of that shit. I've got a good friend who did a code pass on did a lot of programming actually on Volume, and he described my code as it's code written by an idiot, but because it's so stupid, it's very easy to read. That was his review of my code.
That's great.
And that's fine.
That
and
seems good.
Like, that's that sounds like he had an easy time. I think that's a good thing. So,
but the thing about Undertale's code allegedly being terrible, like it's like basically he's just bad at it, is I find it inspirational, if anything, that it's like, and he made fucking Undertale.
It doesn't matter, like, and especially in games, code can be bad in a couple of different ways. Code can be bad in the sense that it runs poorly, which doesn't matter because you're making a 2D platformer. You're not going to be taxing the hardware you're on, so that's fine. Code can be bad in that it's hard to read, but the reality is that most like beginner level code is so rudimentarily, that's my word of the fucking call.
Yeah, I love rudimentary.
Most of it's so simply written. Most of that code is so simply written that it's very readable by like a skilled programmer anyway. So you can't really fuck up. And then I guess the final way code can be bad is if it creates lots of bugs and problems for other people or is difficult to work with. But again, on a smaller team, that becomes less of an issue. So
I think he made that game by himself.
Code is good if it runs.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. It's like it might look ugly and it's like inefficient or whatever it is. Some of the stuff about it is genuinely really funny. Like you'll see, like I saw a breakdown of somebody talking about why certain parts of his code are so bad. But again, you're right. It's not actually bad if he made a functional video game. And not only did he make a functional video game, he made a really good one.
There's someone listening to this who is like on the engine team at a AAA company who is like, these people are full of shit, code needs to be perfect. And yes, if you're making a 3D engine for a AAA studio,
very different.
Or you're doing fucking rocket science, or you're doing, you're finding a cure for AIDS or cancer or whatever, like, cool, do it right. But if you're making a video game, the stakes are lower, and most of the time, good enough is good enough.
Again, especially 2D, like it's such a different thing.
And crucially,
I didn't realize
teams.
how extreme that was.
If you're one or two of you, it's fine. That's the biggest on the indie side. When you go up to a team, like I said, like my last thing, 20 people. There, people had to have code standards. They had to be careful and deliberate, so it's not
because multiple people are doing. Yeah.
Because multiple people, but then it just comes back to it's essentially a communication problem, not a code problem. It's just you have to communicate better in your code. Like, so I know I honestly, the whole cottage industry of like antagonistic game development content, I've not got much time for all of these, like I made this AAA game in 3 days and now the devs hate me, all that shit.
It's clickbait. I will say the video that I saw about the Toby Fox thing was sparked by like an article that it was what I ended up reading that was very friendly about it.
It might be useful.
It was not. They were not I think shitting on him in any way. It was like very like endearing, but it is funny.
And could be educational as well, right?
Yeah, true.
Like definitely, like I've coded a few of our games. I'm self-taught as well, which means that I have so many bad fucking habits that I don't even know about. So those kind of educational learning moments. I remember Command and Conquer. EA released all of the source code for Command and Conquer a couple of years ago. And there were programmers poring over that and looking at how those things were done back in the day. And that stuff is fascinating and interesting. But like,
Yeah, is that interesting to you to look at how other things are coded?
Totally, yeah. Yeah, it's there's like genuinely as well, not just necessarily similar to writing actually. I don't care so much about like lines of code individually, but seeing how other people structure things or solve problems is massively useful. Like I'll do a shout out to a channel AI in Games, which is a channel that is largely devoted to like, okay, so how does the guy in Halo know to shoot me? And like working the structure through of how that code is written, and ironically, lots of state machines usually. Like all of that stuff is useful because those patterns you can then duplicate, or you can go, oh, I can, you might for your game, you might be like, I want to kind of have these enemies feel like Half-Life enemies, or these enemies feel like Metal Gear Solid enemies. Like quantifying that on a design level is one thing, but knowing how they're structured and coded and how those things were built. Often with like that channel's really good because he'll often have like content or interviews with the programmers who will tell you like this is how we set this up or how we did something. So yeah, that stuff's really useful.
Is there a universal rule for the process? Oh, sorry. Is there a universal rule for the right way to code something?
Not really, no.
Because I wonder, like, if I were to give
there's better and worse ways of doing anything, but yeah.
Yeah, if I were to give 3 teams the same thing and be like, here's exactly what I want you to make, and here's exactly what I want. This can't exist, but bear with me. Exactly what I want you to make, and exactly what I want it to look like, and you have a week. How different would the code look just based on the people doing it?
It would probably. Assuming the game that was being shown, let's assume the game they make is identical because your documentation was perfect and they read every word. So every game is exactly the same. I would say a lot of it would come down to structure, essentially. So how they solve those problems. And there's certainly like messy ways to do it that would be, if you come back to them, which is always the game dev thing, and say, oh, actually, I want everyone to be wearing a red hat. There would be some of them might have done bad code that was hard to add a red hat, whereas another team might have done things in a way that would let a red hat slot in very easily. I also think as well there's and this is all above my skill level, but there's like different schools of thought on how you design code. So there might be almost like regional variations, not literally regional, but like programmers who believe that stuff should be structured in one way versus another way, and those differences would have different pros and cons. So yeah, I think most problems in programming, especially game programming, can be solved in multiple different ways. There are usually pros and cons to which way you use. Some of them are to do with making it efficient. Some of them are to do with extensibility. Some of them, frankly, are to do with how clever you are at coding and what you can manage. So yeah, but yeah, there's no right way, I would say. There's a right solution for you in a moment as an individual programmer on an individual game.
Yeah, it's
an experience is just knowing which you're getting to that decision faster is the only difference between like a junior and a senior programmer.
Yeah, I guess because I'm like just learning very, very fundamental basics, it does feel like it's binary. Like there are rules and you should follow these rules, but it could also just be that the sources that I'm reading things from are telling me that. But like
it depends how high level. If you want to change the color of something in Godot, there's 4 ways of doing it, for example, right? Like that's the. But there's but if you want to move if you want something to be in a different place on the screen, yes, there is a right way of doing that. But do you want that place on the screen to be relative to the parent of that object? Do you want to place on the screen? Do you want it to move smoothly or mimic? Like there's so much granularity. It's the raindrop on the hand metaphor from Jurassic Park of like, yes, theoretically, if you could account for every hair on the back of your hand and every wrinkle and imperfection, you could predict where the thing would fall, but in a real literal sense in the real world, you would not be able to do that. It's similar with coding of like, there is theoretically one perfect solution, but unless you're a mega coder, and I know of like 2 or 3 guys who I would confidently say would find that answer, but the rest of us just muddle around and figure it out. Or change our minds 2 days later about what we wanted the game to be doing, and then have to kind of transplant this code over here and move this and plug it in differently. Like I'm working on a complex bit of the thing I'm working on right now, and like I said to Kerry this morning, it's like I either need to spend a day like cutting this out of the game and rebuilding it, or I need to like create a cyborg of all of these pieces and connect them up, and just trying to decide which of those was the best choice given the time available, my skill level, what I'm trying to achieve, blah, 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 blah.
I feel like it's much more creative than people give it credit for. There's a lot of human creativity going into that decision making, even though you're writing lines of code.
I think people think it's a lot like playing a musical instrument. People, because the beginner entry level thing with programming is knowing the right words to type in to make the thing happen, people assume that's the complexity, that just the good programmers know better words, right? They know, they just know they have a higher vocabulary, they know how to play all of the notes on the violin. But actually, once you cross that kind of beginner to moderate level, you realize that I can Google what word I need. The much more important decision is how I'm going to structure this. Yeah. What mood am I trying to convey with this instrument? All of those kind of higher tier things, and kind of work from there. It's interesting. It's a fun. I like programming. I can't remember if this was something we were talking about before or after we started recording, but like that's my joy in game development. That's the thing where I hit a flow state where I'm just writing code. I'm the happiest. I'm terrible at it though, comparatively.
Apparently, that doesn't matter as long as you make the thing. Toby Fox made fucking Undertale.
I'm of a Toby Fox skill level. Yeah. I am going to immediately go and check out this article that you're talking about because I do want to see.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it.
I want to have
the
vicarious thrill of seeing someone else's mistakes.
Yeah, but it was not written in a way that was like fuck you. It was very endearing. Like it was not written. It was funny to read as somebody who's like just kind of poking into how all of this works at this point in my life, and it was it was kind of sweet in a way that like is like he fucking the difference between creatives making something and not making something is often like I feel more and more strongly about this with some of the like different kinds of work that I'm doing these days is that a lot of people are afraid to make something bad. You have to make the bad thing before you can turn it into a good thing. And there's so many people who just don't make something at all because they're worried it will be bad. Then you didn't make anything. And once you make the bad thing, you can make better things and you can make something, you can scrap that thing entirely if you want. But like I know so many people who say they want to be screenwriters who've never finished a script. And they're like, it's hard. I'm like, no, it's definitely because you're worried your first script will be bad. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
It's more important than you make it than that it's bad. Who gives a shit?
I increasingly, and I'll have more opinions on this in a few months where I can talk more about some stuff. But I increasingly am of the opinion that the only difference between a good piece of creative work and a bad piece of creative work is the time you're allowed to iterate on it, or the time you allow yourself to iterate on it. If you look at, your favorite artist, your favorite, someone who puts up the time lapses of them painting something. If you look at how that painting looks after the first 5 minutes, you could do that. Yep. They just stick with it for an hour. You know what I mean? They just keep iterating.
I think you can make anything good with enough time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I mean is money, right? That's kind of the problem. But make the bad.
It's money. It's also scary. It's also scary and intimidating. And I think that's the person who hasn't finished a screenplay. That's the hurdle. It's just accepting that you have to look at the bad stuff. It's again another cliche, but the writer who said they're a terrible writer but an amazing editor. So they just write a shit thing and then edit it till it's ready. And that's how they get themselves up in the morning and get to work, is they just write something shit and fix it, which is honestly how most of my stuff.
I would actually say that's how most writers function. It's like you just, as long as you
I think it is, but I've not heard it articulated. Yeah, I like that articulation of it. I think is nice. But I think that's true of most.
Because it also gives you an excuse. Work. Like, it's shit now. Who cares now? I'm going to fix it. It's fine. Which, like, whatever gets you through it, man. Like whatever gets you to actually finish it. Because one of the bigger hurdles with a lot of like the stuff we're specifically talking about is just people have so much self-loathing. So like they feel like they're bad and then they feel shit about being bad. Bro, it's okay to be bad.
It's word.
Okay.
I wish I knew the word off the top of my head. Here you go. This is a challenge for the comments. Someone will have this in the comments. There's a word for it in painting, which is when you're working with I think it's with oils, where you paint the canvas with just paint first. Before you paint the picture, you fill the canvas with paint. And there's a specific French word for that school of oil painting, basically, where you first fill the page with color. You do oil the canvas with color. You do not start from a blank canvas.
That's
and if you
interesting.
say the French word, you sound clever. I can't remember what it is.
Now you
I
just
wish I
sound
could,
really
but
dumb.
Someone in the comments will say it. Now I do. I sound like the Toby Fox of oil painting.
Of French oil painting, yeah. That's what people know you
Yeah.
as.
Massively successful oil painter who doesn't know how to oil paint. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thanks for chatting to me today, Mike. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. That's Mike Bailey, video game director. I'm a video game writer. Wishlist layers deep. We'll see you guys next time.